Okay, that is One-Eyed Jack and the Shells. Death to the Ball. This is the Ips Morning Deprogram. So much to talk about here. Lots to talk about. We are doing sort of an overview of the latest psyops and just putting things into the proper context in our grossly reality-impaired society. It's unbelievable. I'm looking at this video circulating on TikTok, and it's basically a bird that appears to be hovering in the air. And people are just gathered around like Vegas Star, and these are big accounts. We're talking major league social media influencers, basically internet celebrities. These guys are stars. And so here, Vegas Star, probably a billion subs, and he's like, this is a very peculiar video. This emerged from Malaysia. It features a large bird suspended in midair, seemingly defying gravity with no visible support. This bird, clearly alive, exhibits a slight twitch. Below, a fire truck was stationed with a man wielding a long pole, and they attempted to make contact with it. Despite his efforts, this bird remained unaffected. Could this be a sign of our reality's matrix faltering? And I've addressed these before. There's a few like this, and the long and short of it is this. You're looking at a bird hanging on some kind of a wire, usually near a light pole, always near traffic. Like there are lights in the area, so there are wires in the area. So you see a bird seemingly suspended in midair. What's your first thought? Well, you know strings, like, okay, kites. You ever seen a kite fly? You ever wonder, how is that thing hovering? How is that diamond-shaped, colorful piece of plastic just hovering there wherever the kid looks? Well, there's a string. Maybe you can't see the string. You know that expression, smoke and mirrors? I think we need to add strings. String, smokes, and mirrors. String, smoke, and mirrors, because your perceptions can be fudged with. So here you have, again, a number of people who are looking at this bird freaking out on Twitter. Now, the truth of it is, it was caught in a kite string. The fire and rescue officer explained, this bird was caught on a thin kite string. I didn't know it was a kite string. I was just putting out there that those are things you can't see. But it makes sense now. Here you have a living bird floating in the air. But now, what is the point? Well, my point is this. First, Vegas Star has 136,000 followers. He says, join us in the latest, greatest truth-seeking content to awaken to the reality of our world. And how can you awaken to the reality of a world where you are what do you want to call this? Like when somebody believes what they see on the screen, on TV, I call them mainstream media fundamentalists. What do you call people who fall for sleight of hand, sleight of mind, magic tricks? Dupes? It's like you might as well... Well, we'll continue through some comments. I'll let them speak for themselves. So I want you to see what people think. First person says, glitch in the matrix. Now I want you to notice here that nobody's asking questions. Nobody's saying, there must be more to the story. Exactly. Jungle Jim says, must be settled. Birds must be fake. Yeah, people will draw conclusions from this little piece of information. And this is very educational from an auto-hoaxology perspective, because the error in their judgment is simple. They rushed to judgment. Anybody who thinks that this is paranormal rushed to judge based on limited information, or based on the framing of the video by Vegas Star, who threw in it, who just put it out there. It could be Bigfoot, could be UFOs, could be the Matrix. Continuing, Dean says, this looks like it's a pigeon. Okay, this is a spoiler. It's an old video, a pigeon caught in a kite string. Someone else says maybe the bird's wings stopped working. It's not magic or the Matrix. It's riding the wind. I've seen golden eagles do it too. Interesting theory there. I mean, his hypothesis, this thing was just floating like a golden eagle, but its wings were straight up in the air. But going through the comments, I would say 1 out of 50 is able to immediately determine it's fake. A lot of people just joke about it. Escaping the Matrix, they're trying to pull him back in. It's a motorized model. So what is it? Is it a robot bird? Is it a glitch? Is it CGI? or is it a string? One of the most interesting answers came from Whimsy Quest, who said it's an eruv, E-R-U-V, a symbolic boundary created with fishing wire hung from a series of utility poles. This creates a safe space for Orthodox Jews to carry out certain things. Okay, this is interesting. So I looked into this one. I'm like, what is that? Turns out there is something, some kind of here we go, a ritual enclosure that is made, a eruv, Hebrew word mixture, and it allows activities that are normally prohibited during the Sabbath. So in other words, we're talking about poles and strings, all kinds of guesses here. What could it be? But my point is, if you rush to the judgment that it's probably the Matrix or it's probably magic, if you rush to a supernatural, paranormal explanation because you didn't have enough information, you're what I'd consider to be a low information believer. And most people are. And I think it's just kind of interesting to watch how they respond to these obviously debunkables. But hoaxes, scams, these things have been around since the beginning of time. We're hardwired for this. Some people are easily duped because they haven't been deprogrammed. 6079 says they have the same thing for the Jews around New York. Fascinating. It makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense that people would fall for it. I mean, that they see it on Twitter so they believe it. It's a like I call it it's a new thing. It's a low information believer. But why? Why do we have so many? Well, because there's low consequences for believing dumb things or wrong things or erroneous things. You can believe in anything today so long as it doesn't conflict with what the mainstream wants you to believe. Here's something I thought was intriguing. This is another example of what I'd call predictive programming. NASA asteroid strikes. There's an asteroid that NASA struck. So they shot an asteroid, just like in the movies. We've been talking about this for some time. The movie Don't Look Up, how it's the Earth as Titanic and it's going to be hit by an iceberg, but the iceberg is a comet. And they use Leonardo DiCaprio for that role for a reason. In fact, I have a picture of Leonardo DiCaprio here from that movie. Don't Look Up. Now, there's a comet coming, but the rich, greedy capitalists decide that instead of deflecting it, they want to mine the thing. And everybody dies. Spoiler. Everybody dies. Well, in real life, not the movie, NASA shot some kind of a space rock, and they said it's unleashing a boulder storm as deadly as Hiroshima. This is from Yahoo News. NASA, again, has this system called DART, just like the movies, just like Asteroid even. But it was last September. NASA crashed a spacecraft into the asteroid Dimorphos in the first planetary defense experiment aimed at finding ways to protect humanity from extinction-level events. They can protect us from the things that just happened to be in the movies that summer. Now, astronomers have found that although the impact succeeded in knocking it off course, it dislodged 37 boulders that are zipping towards us at 13,000 miles per hour. So we have a boulder storm from space coming, and it's going to be as bad as Hiroshima, and it's all because the scientists shot it. Now, I'm just suggesting here, there's a couple of layers to this story. Even the name of the rocks in the sky that they shoot down are always significant. I mean, do you remember when you had the rock called Bennu being shot by Osiris Rex? Well, Osiris Rex, King Osiris, Bennu's the original phoenix, the Egyptian version. But this is just like the movie Don't Look Up. So we're all going to die is long and short of it. 37 Hiroshimas. And birds float. Birds can just levitate. And Hiroshima is going to happen in 37 states because we shot a space rock. Now, if you look at Leonardo DiCaprio's face on Don't Look Up, he looks sick with worry, and he is worried. He can't sleep. He can't sleep because he knows that the sky is falling and nobody believes him. It's a nightmare situation. He has 6 months and 14 days to convince the world. And all throughout the movie, he's taking bottles of pills for his anxiety. He's got agoraphobia. He can't even go outside without looking up. This is to convey to you that this is a serious issue. And if you had the knowledge that the scientists have, you wouldn't leave your house without your space junk helmet, without your asteroid helmet. You wouldn't leave the house without a mask or a dunce cap to make sure you fit in. I mean, that's what they're showing us here, is that you should be like this guy. You should just be totally scared. Don't look up is the name of the movie. Don't look up information that might contradict what they've been telling you. Now, contrast him with this one. John Bradley. This is the actor from a movie that came out around the same time. It's called Moonfall. Like Don't Look Up, Moonfall is about big things falling from the sky. Like the character played by DiCaprio, the character played by John Bradley is anxiety-ridden, glasses, neck beard, takes a lot of pills because he's agoraphobic, because the sky's falling. These are two different movies that came out at the same time with the same archetype, the new Noah. And today's Noah, who's trying to warn the world about what's going to happen, he's got agoraphobia and bad anxiety. By the way, this guy was 33 when they did this movie, which explains why John Bradley's character was a sacrificial, scientific Jesus to save the world. Going through your comments here, Into the Break says, most people I talk to about the globe being debunked look like that. Yeah. Well, low information believers have that look of, it's almost like, like soldiers waiting for the next order. They're not quite in the moment. They got to wait for what the screen's going to tell them how to react, what to react to. Like there's this thing that's been overblown in Montgomery, some kind of a fight between a group of people on a dock, and I barely paid any attention to it because I'm just jaded. It's like, oh look, more fights between humans being categorized on Twitter according to their racial and skin color breakdowns. But this one has been getting a lot of media attention, so it's kind of difficult to ignore something that gets that much attention. It's like they want you to see it. And the fact is, it took place in Alabama, and Alabama was the focus for a lot of us because we were watching Trump on 8/4. So let me go ahead and bring up a little bit about that. Synchro Morpheus had said in our Gilded that we hadn't talked too much about it, but it's pretty wild if you haven't seen it. I've already pointed out the curious timing. It was the day after Trump made his appearance in the city, and we were expecting something to happen. The footage of the footage of the fight is meme-worthy. Yeah, if you haven't seen it, it looks comical, as he says here. Quote, "It looks like something out of a Popeye cartoon at times. LOL, and it's the most racially inflammatory thing I've seen since the George Floyd incident, and people are going crazy on social media, making parodies and using it for divisive purposes." And this is why we study it. I don't watch the news because it's intrinsically entertaining or the stories are good. We're watching it to understand how the mass mind is being mediated, and they're being fed a steady diet of basically race war agitprop. But in this case, they have this big fight in Alabama, and it's being taken in a number of ways. Most people are laughing at these fight scenes. Here's an example. Now you're seeing people getting hit by chairs. Someone is swimming across the river to get to defend the other guys. It's a joke. I mean, it doesn't look fake to me. It looks like every other fight I've seen on Twitter. Actually, this one's so lightweight, it's hardly worth noticing. Nobody got head stomped. Nobody got shot. That's why I kind of said this is barely worthy of a passing mention. But as Synchro Morpheus pointed out, this does seem to be catching on in the social media. And here's what's interesting about some of the characters. Like one of them, Chase Shipman, one of the white perpetrators in this racially framed fight. I guess we just call it a race war in Alabama. They'll talk about this for generations. Anyway, this guy owns a store in Alabama. He was there. He ran from the fight, And what has been pointed out here by Synchromorpheus is that the guy who ran from the fight is named Chase Shipman. So the guy that owns a ship. You know, kind of like, I mean, so many examples we can point out here where the actor's name seems to indicate their purpose. Like my favorite is Roseanne Boylan with the "Don't Tread on Me" flag getting trampled. And curiously, the guy does look like a Scott Adams. And that resemblance is notable considering Scott Adams went full-blown alt-right and went really deep into the being racist for ironic purposes, and he lost his cartoon syndication, Dilbert. But again, what's being pointed out here by Synchromorpheus is that this could, quote, be some kind of a staged WWE production. And I tend to agree. This must be. Now here's a pretty good meme. Have a Seat, 1955, as Rosa Parks, who's 42 when she does this bit of activism. And then the meme on the bottom shows Montgomery, Alabama, people getting hit by chairs. Have a Seat, 2023. Now, again, this is interesting to me too because we're talking about psychological operations that play into the black versus white. And whenever they do, you will see the number 42. Like I said, Rosa Parks is 42. Oh, and recently in the news, the twin of George Floyd, Stephen Jackson, 42. Well, listen to this. The African-American man who was seen in one of the viral videos related to the Montgomery Riverfront brawl, Reggie Gray. So Reggie Gray, who is he? This is one of the characters of interest. Police ask Reggie Gray, a 42-year-old black male, to come answer questions about swinging the chairs. So the guy at the chair, 42. Then you had a 16-year-old who was applauded for jumping into the action. He swam across the river to save people. And I'm pointing this out because listen to this. A 16-year-old black teen has been credited as a hero for, quote, jumping into action and swimming across the water to defend a black man who was being attacked by a group of white dockers. Again, it's their framing. This is TMZ or something. But my point is, if you remember back in April, there was a 16-year-old who ran the doorbell. It was the wrong one, and he got shot. And they said it was like an old white man. And this was against the backdrop of another series of events, but the number 16 was standing out. There were the Sweet 16 shootings that we were talking about at the time. The wrong door shooting, the wrong driveway shooting, wrong car shooting. All kinds of people were getting shot. It was the Wild West for like a week. And then it stopped. But they specifically focused on that 16-year-old who rang the doorbell and got shot for it. Now, here you have it again, a kind of like a continuation of that story, 16-year-old going to go fight the whites to defend the blacks. I mean, it's just, it's a good story. I can see why this seems like it's WWE. Snowball pointed out, tsunami, more meanings for the tidal wave. What's the odds of predictive programming calling for some kind of a nuke or water attack? And now we have these new weapons. North Korea developed its own tsunami-making Poseidon. We've been talking about this for some time, this Kraken thing building up and how it ties into the submersible and all these various movies, the Jaws movies recently even coming up, that the attack's going to come from the water. The next 9/11 is going to be a water-based attack, a sea attack, Seattle, in all likelihood. Well, now North Korea has developed its own Poseidon. And I talked about this just the other day. Last August, there were drills and simulations being done in downtown Seattle in which they said if we have a tidal wave, it'll be 40. If we have a tsunami, it would be 42 feet high, and it would reach this part of Seattle. So they were already doing simulations for the supposed hypothetical 42-foot waves that would hit Seattle if they had an earthquake of 7.5. Now, earthquake or Poseidon, it doesn't make a difference. Going through some comments here. Echo Charlie asks, was alcohol involved? Right. You know what? This is why I like the think tank, because people need to ask more questions before they say, okay, it's race. Those ones are black, those are white, that's a race war. Well, I don't know. Maybe half of them were drunk. Maybe there's more to the story. You have to know what happened 30 seconds prior. But we're made to rush to judgment. And this is by training. And this is one of the reasons why I advocate the auto hoax approach to mass media. Suspending judgment on everything makes more sense, because if they can get you to agree to the premise of a story in 30 seconds, they can get you to agree to a lie. And these lies compound and they build up these entire belief systems, and then you end up with a bunch of people who are completely divorced from reality in their own little cult. We see this all the time. Look at the Q movement. And the suspension of judgment is actually not encouraged by the mass media. They want you to believe, believe, believe. This guy crying on TV, believe it. Okay, well, I didn't have time to look at the facts. There's no discovery. You just said rush to believe, rush to judge. So now what you're seeing, I think, is the habit of consuming media the way that people do today, just downloading it directly, no filtration, extends to anything else that they're ever shown now. And that's why people believe that birds float in the air. Even planes. I've seen videos where it looks like a plane is floating, and I've seen many people run with that. Yeah, 33 seconds prior, says Eric of Bear. Happy birthday, Jennifer Reeves, turned 42 last week. Joined by JT33. In fact, JT33 has a track called, I believe it's The Call, and it has the number 42 in it. Let me get that queued for later. Now that we have audio and video functioning. Again, if you have any sort of comments or links and you're listening on the audio streams, you can just jump right in. Just go to infiniteplane.live and select any of the links. So we're kind of going over this fake fight in Alabama. I mean, it's probably a real fight. It looks real. But I don't know. Again, is it looking real evidence? It looks so real to me in the sense that these people don't know what they're doing. Like, these aren't choreographed actors. This is what I would expect a bunch of normies to do if they were drunk. Now, as far as the 800 number, I do have an option. If you can't call, if you're not here in America, if you don't have the way to call the 505, call via Skype, because that number actually goes right to my Skype. And the easiest way to get there is just go to my Twitter account, and at the very top there's a hot link, or just go to Skype and search Infinite Plane Radio. Now let me play a clip here just to give you an idea of how people are responding to the video in Alabama. And again, this is a very selective video. This thing was put in front of our faces for a reason. And this individual has watched the video, and he really felt like it means something. Let me go ahead and play this.
And it feel like, bro, a lot of us been waiting on that to happen, you feel me? I feel like that shit activated something in me, man. And it feel like if all of us get together right now, bro, we can dominate for sure, for sure. I'm talking about that's what it feel like right now. That's the...
Now the caption here, and some of the comments here explain his point. What he's suggesting is, he says, this was our sign to start fighting back. Yeah, I guess some team spirit is what you could say. I'm not reading too much into it other than this was served to the mass mind. They're trying to agitate, and people will respond to agitation. And it's summertime. People are ready to go out and have fun. Look what happened. Was that in Chicago? Where was it where they had the video game console giveaway and there's a big riot? Big violent riot because they didn't get their toys. Joined by Psy-Obstacles. Says, terrible fighters swinging like windmills. It can't be staged. See, that's what I'm thinking. A dream for the media and their race baiting. Yeah, here's the thing. I think the people were shirtless, and so it was easy to categorize it. because the media is anything but colorblind, and we know how it works. But is that going to be another George Floyd? No. I mean, I think that Jordan Neely was meant to be, but people aren't responding the way that they used to, or they never do respond unless there's a lot of paid agitators. I mean, it's kind of a toss-up. You've got to determine how much of that mob is organic, how much is CGI, how much is astroturfed. Okay, I'm going through my Discord. We have comments lining up in Discord, so if anybody wants to join that just for the chat, go ahead. But I'm also going through the research right now on our Gilded account, and we've been looking at this Disease X thing. Like, what's with all the X's? All of a sudden, Disease X comes out. SpaceX's CEO, Elon Musk, changes Twitter to X. Now, Disease X was rehearsed at Clade X. So this looks like an event 201. Now, I didn't watch this yet, the Clade X. If it's available, I'm going to check it out today. But this has people asking, are we about to see a new pandemic? And to that, I really have low expectations for the PSYOP entertainment complex because they already played that card, and I don't think they could just play it again now that they've already built a principled objection to it. There's already an anti. I don't see how that could work. However, there may be some other way that they play this card. For example, I've been thinking for some time that the next thing is locking down the internet because of cyber hate, probably they'll say viruses. But in other words, maybe we're going to see some kind of internet equivalent to a lockdown where everybody has to quarantine to these certain sites while everything else is, I don't know how they're going to do it, but I think it's more likely they're going to change the tactic a little bit now that we've been trained. Psyopsicle says the banks are going to crash due to phony cyber attacks. Well, just the other day, I think it was on the 4th, you had like 5 hospitals getting shut down. You've had all these disruptions. And the public, of course, being acclimated to it, being prepared for it. And look at what people don't care about. Villagers claim they're under attack from 7-foot-tall aliens. They dub the aliens face peelers. A group of Peruvian villagers living in fear say they're under attack by mysterious 7-foot-tall aliens they call face peelers. I'm looking for photos or pictures. They claim they're shrouded in hoods, and they target the community. I guess they go after them at night. But now this is just like the movie The Village. For their own safety, they stay home at night. Now they have night patrols to protect the women and children of the vulnerable. Now, this sounds like a goofy story. It sounds like tabloid. It sounds like more UFO predictive programming, alien invasion predictive programming. But you know what I think this might be? I think this might actually be a psyop. I think that when you have small communities, I think community leaders love to do psyops to terrorize the local population. Like the movie The Village might be how societies have always run, like from the very beginning. Nicotrauma says 33 trillion debt mark right now, right around the corner. Count on an economic hoax. JT33 says, I've seen face peelers on mushrooms, but they turned out to be harmless. Well, I've heard of something similar here. They call them, I think there's skinwalkers? People in Hawaii flee into the ocean to escape wildfires that are burning a Maui tourist town. The only reason these stories are even notable is that the reason why they pay attention is they can blame it on climate change. It says here, fires were rare in Hawaii and on other tropical islands before humans arrived and the native ecosystems evolved without them. This means great environmental damage can occur when fires erupt. For example, fires remove vegetation. When a fire is followed by heavy rainfall, the rain can carry loose soil into the ocean, where it smothers coral reefs. See what you did, humanity? See what you did? Everyone wants, like every single belief system out there, whatever it happens to be, it always has you at some point blaming man. Now, let me replay this clip here. We kind of breezed over this yesterday, but this is a big deal. For a long time, we've been talking about the number 33 and how it refers to transcendence, the age that Christ transcended the material. 33 vertebrae, 33 chakra from the root to the crown, and that this is your terrestrial vehicle, but that ascending this realm requires going beyond the 33 or going to the 33rd or the highest state of consciousness that correlates to that number. And interestingly enough, we've talked about how outer space is just a reiteration of the older mystery schools and their concepts of heaven and transcendence and higher states. Well, here is I won't say whistleblower, but here's an individual breaking down how at the top level of the Freemasonic cult, they're told what 33 means. And interestingly, it has to do with transcending the material realm.
What is the main reason for the 33rd degree Masons? The main reason is not to, everybody thinks it's some kind of crazy thing. It's actually space travel. 33rd degree Masons is about space travel.
Space travel. Space travel. Now, that's probably what they're told. That's probably what they believe. That's probably what they're told to believe, because that's how cults work. And whether they believe it or not, or know it to be true, most will tend to go along to get along. But this seems to be what they're told. But now listen to this.
It's the ultimate goal, because Masonry goes all the way back to the Chateau coming out of the land of Chem, the brick Masons that had the secret knowledge that was then lost in the mystery schools. It's all about reobtaining the capability of traveling in space. Why do I say that? Because you have to travel 33 times the speed of sound to escape Earth's gravity to get into space.
33 times the speed of sound. So Mach 33. You have to go Mach 33 in order to transcend the realm. That's just too perfect. Psyopsical says they can't give up that space thing, such incredible programming. No doubt. They quite literally can't. What they're doing, I believe, is they just update their old mythologies. So I'm kind of curious, what were they taught before? I'm pretty sure there's some kind of an explanation that the initiates are given when they reach a certain level. And this is all of them. And once they reach that particular level, they're told that they have the highest truth. Like, Scientologists at the very top, I believe they're told that the world was populated by alien craft and human souls were transported here, dropped into volcanoes, and that we're under the, I guess, rulership of a galactic ruler named Xenu. Now that sounds, obviously it sounds like they made it up to tell the people at the very top, but why would this be any different? And I think every cult has its own little secrets they tell people at the top, like Dan Brown movies. In the Dan Brown books, you got the secret at the very top where you find out, oh, Jesus wasn't a virgin and he was hooking up with the Magdalene, or however they explained it. It's meant to be a big reveal, and it shatters your belief system. All right, let's continue here. Into the Break says, space is volume. We all travel space. Space isn't just an innocuous place. That is not like all other known space we experience. Space is past the horizon. The island Club 27 resides at. Yeah, like Utopia. Crisis Actor Island is in Utopia, that movie. But now, something else. They're not trying to control, or rather take you to space. They don't want to take you to some far off, distant paradise. NASA has always been about world view control, and they're controlling your inner space, your mind space. You can't handle the truth says, when you infiltrated, how high did you get? Infiltrated? What does that even mean? Like, are you an infiltrator here on the earth? You're just living your life, going through things. You read a book, you join a club, you learn things. I joined lots of clubs, and I was not infiltrating. I was in the military. I wasn't infiltrating. I was in the army. After the army, I was Well, during the Army, in fact, I was introduced to a lot of people who are in this Freemasonic cult, and I got a number of them to sign for me to join when I left. So it wasn't an infiltration. But what I found there was interesting, to say the least, and it comports with what I thought previous to joining, because before that I was already pretty well read on the topic of secret societies in general. And Freemasons always try to play it down. They're not a religion. They're not a cult. Well, only the lower level people who don't know what they're talking about would say that. Let me go to move on to the next topic here. We're talking about Mach 33. Covered that yesterday. So the NASA asteroid strike is going to kill us all. They were trying to save us. They shot a big space rock. It splintered into 37 parts, and it's going to, doesn't say when. Doesn't say when, so mark your doomsday calendar. I guess we'll have you update that soon. Apophis 42999 is still going to hit us in 2029, I think. How many doomsdays do we have scheduled? We ought to put together an actual doomsday calendar. I mean, a lot of them are past, especially the gold, like the oceans rising. Those ones have all kind of passed, but I wouldn't be surprised if every single day the world's supposed to end, according to somebody somewhere. What is the Lionsgate portal? Yesterday was 8/8, and there's some kind of portal opening up in the sky. I don't know if any of you saw it, but the alignment has, this gate is the alignment of Sirius and Orion's belt. So there's some kind of celestial alignment on 8/8, which makes a lot of occultists go wild. We don't know what they do behind the scenes, but something was up. This was the date they chose to raid Mar-a-Lago as well. All kinds of numbers with Trump that always tie back to the same, like 88, text him 8802. He's raided on 8/8. Endless. Now, about the asteroid threat, the sky is falling. Just another version of it. Now, they can't predict an asteroid's going to hit us and then have us all prepare for it like they would in a movie, because they're not that accurate. They never have been. So I think they have a new technique here, their new tactic. Their new tactic is, we're going to shoot down rocks to save us, and then parts of it are going to come hit us. Like, I think they're going to do like they did in Don't Look Up. Like, that's the nature of this drill. And they did this back in 2019. They called it a fictional event, where NASA did a drill with FEMA to rehearse some kind of space-borne disaster, whether it be a meteor or a comet hitting the Earth. How do we respond on the ground? And since then, we've been inundated with movies about stuff falling from the sky. I have a comment here on fake nukes also, because fake nukes are being talked about. We can laugh and say nukes are fake, there's nothing to fear. We can celebrate that if you wish. The thing is, when they introduced fake nukes, everybody believes it. So are they really fake? Are nukes really fake if everybody believes in them? The answer is no. And they're real enough. In other words, fake nukes, fake nuclear bombs destroyed objective reality. They destroyed it. There is no more objective reality, if you haven't noticed. And the power elite are able to use their weapons, these, like, it's like a god, basically. They've ascended to this power, this godlike status, where if we hit a button, if that chubby guy over there hits that button, we're all going to die. If that madman hits the button, we're all going to die. It just goes around. So we're all just like, okay, so now we're in some kind of a what do they call those? Mexican standoffs? But it's with the nuclear bombs. That's what we're supposed to believe. That's what they did to our reality. In other words, they put us into a hostage situation. We were put into a hostage situation, collectively. We, humanity, are being held hostage. Now we are watching their screens and paying up whatever they demand. We are in their dream world. So interestingly enough, they destroyed the world in terms of our objective grasp on it, and they put us into total mind war. Then it kind of makes sense to say that the power to fake such power paradoxically gave the elite the real power that a real nuclear bomb would have given them. Commenter asks if I can unblock him on Twitter. Yeah, go ahead and post your Twitter handle and I'll follow you and unblock you if I have. I have a new Twitter account you have to join or follow me. It's Auto Hoaxology. I live stream on that Twitter account. It's unblocked, ungatekept. I can do spaces and video live streams. It's the newest one. I'm phasing out the other ones. AJ206 says Infinite Plane is live on air East Coast for lunch break. Mr. Pride asks, does the asteroid have to hit Mach 33 to enter the atmosphere? Good question. Probably Mach 42. JT33 says consensus reality. Exactly. If everybody believes it, it may as well be true. Look at 2020. Echo Charlie says, we were born into a doomsday cult, escaped on the back of a penguin. Well, you know, when penguins amass on the water, it's called a raft. And as the world stage is being flooded by the sea of irrelevance, it makes sense to raft up. So find your nearest penguin. That is your life preserver. This has been the IPS Morning Deprogram for 8/9/2023. We are going to be live to take calls later on this evening. I just wanted to talk about our reality impaired society and touch on some of the developing psyops of the day. SpaceX fires up a giant new Starship booster, all 33 engines as part of a static fire test. This was yesterday. Good, you have 33 engines because you got to go Mach 33 so you can transcend the material realm and enter heaven. It's all allegory. Once you understand that rocket science, look, rocket science isn't rocket science. Rocket science is free Masonic allegory. You know, the Masons used to build cathedrals, and they used the stonework as allegory for shaping the individual from a rough stone to a polished brick. And the Temple of Solomon is looked at as an example of like a perfect system, a perfect world. But they use the building tools to explain in an allegorical fashion how you can evolve spiritually, emotionally, intellectually, etc. And I'm just saying that that's kind of changed now. That they're no longer building in the same, the cult is still based on building, but they've advanced to space travel as their new primary allegory for everything that they were previously about, including sex magic, which is why SpaceX is SpaceX, because SpaceX is literally space sex. It always has been. Mr. Pride says, I'm finally catching a live at work on the job, hoping everyone's having a good day. Peace, peace. Yeah, I'm glad you're here. Look, we're going to be doing IPS morning deprograms frequently. Things are becoming increasingly steady as the days go by. We're moving from the crawl into the walk phase, and pretty soon we'll be moving right into the run phase. The cult of Trump has elevated him to the level of Jesus Christ. This is dangerous, blasphemous, and fosters an anti-Christian perspective. Pretty good take from Now the End Begins. Although I think he's been promoted to Moses. But there is something to this, and a lot of people are noticing there's something to this. And I called this out some time ago, that the way the QAnon had framed Trump and the Kennedys in their worldview, he had become an emissary of Christ, Christ's president. Jesus wants you to follow him because Jesus is way up there. This guy's closer. In other words, you know, God's way up there, but he sends Jesus, you can follow him. He's here on the earth. Well, Trump is God on earth. Emperor God King Trump. And the reason why this is probably turning people off of evangelicals or evangelicalism or religion in general is you have to say, well, these people are crazy. They're worshiping a madman who is the least Christ-like person on earth. That's why I think he could be the Antichrist, which I don't specifically believe in. I think that's a Hollywood creation. But if there is one, it's him. And if you haven't seen The Omen with Damien, the Antichrist, the Omen movies have everything to do with Donald Trump. It's all predictive programming. So, look, even though he's not Jesus, I think it's safe to say he's the Antichrist simply because there is voluminous predictive programming for Donald Trump as the Antichrist. Doesn't mean it's supernatural. This is what I'm trying to point out here. Aliens show up, assume it's SAG actors on strike in costumes. Trump becomes the Antichrist, assume it's theater, World Wrestling Entertainment. I think it's important not to mystify anything that they give us. Someone pointed this out. Anyone wonder why Andrew Tate calls himself the top G? And adjacent to it, they have an image of the Masonic square and compass with the G. Could be. I was listening to an interview with Andrew Tate's brother Tristan. And the Tristan and Tate, these two twins, are they twins? They're the brothers. They both served 91 days for, well, they haven't been charged. But they were both on Tucker Carlson, which means, I mean, I like Tucker Carlson. I like his program. But I recognize its frame of reference. And it just doesn't go as far as we go. And for the most part, I think it's selling people on idols, on influencers. And so the Tates are just some of the latest influencers. And if you don't recall, when he got arrested, it was after he was trolling Greta Thunberg. She said to the top G, hey, what's with your 33 Bugattis? You know, if you have 33 Bugattis, you're obviously bad for the environment. And immediately after that, he uploads a video. He's eating pizza, and the box from the pizza gives away his location, and the Romanian authorities arrest him for suspected human trafficking. A number of people have pointed out that Andrew Tate, top G, with his 33 cars, looks exactly like Cypher from The Matrix. And he does talk about The Matrix a lot. And he does look exactly like him. And he does, I mean, it's, but one thing that's important is, I think, to do your diligence and your due diligence, research things yourself. And I listened to a 3-hour interview with this guy on Candace Owen. And I'm convinced now that he's an operative, an agitator, an agent provocateur, as is Candace Owen. You know, right now, there's this drama about that Jason Aldean song, Try That in a Small Town. Well, Jason Aldean, who was 33 when Vegas happened, by the way, he's like BFFs, he's best friends with Candace Owen. Candace Owen, when she was 33 last year, brought Ye out with the White Lives Matter agitprop. Again, we're talking about agent provocateurs. We're talking about influencers. And one of the things that she hyped up during the entire interview was how much of an influence he is to 12 and 13-year-old boys. They were talking about his influence on little boys. Meanwhile, the right wing is talking about lowering age of consent so they can have babies younger. Like, I think they're manufacturing a worldview based on traditional values, and they're using people like Top G to sell it. And this is just meant as, it's sort of like the opposite of the Great Reset. And when I say the opposite, I mean it's like, take woke to the extreme, take red pill to the extreme. And we're seeing the extremes, and Top G is taking that extreme. I'm not judging or criticizing, I'm just pointing it out. This is where they're going with it. Eric Lieberman says, yes, Fucker Carlson is trash. Well, he's an elitist. You have to just understand he's an elitist pretending to be a populist. And he's like, look, I'm going to go off the rails, ungatekept. I'm going to go on Twitter, and I'm going to tell the truth. Then he's like, what happened to JFK? What about UFOs? UFOs are real. Nobody cared. But people fall. I'm just pointing these individuals out because look, they might not even know how insulated they are. They might even be Trumans in their own little Truman Show existences. They don't have to be fully apprised of the entirety of the PSYOP entertainment complex. In fact, this makes them worse, in my opinion. It makes them worse that most of them believe the PSYOPs are real, and they still grandstand on those dead bodies, left and right. They think these things actually happened, and then they comment on them in such ways. Like, for example, there was a NASCAR driver who lost his gig for sharing a meme mocking the death of George Floyd. Well, I don't think George Floyd's dead. I'm like pretty sure he and his best friend for 17 years, Derek Chauvin, they work together. Pretty sure they're hanging out at Epstein Island with Heath Ledger and Kobe Bryant. Like, I don't think he's dead. There's no indication he's dead. That was a psyop. He's not any deader than Jordan Neely, another Neely psyop. My point is, I don't joke about his death thinking if I was going to. If I was going to joke about his death, I would do so in full knowledge it was fake. If I thought it was a real death, I wouldn't make jokes about it. But people do. So it's where you're coming from. It's your perspective. And Tucker Carlson's perspective is the world stage, where the fringe of the fringe is Red Pill, Alex Jones. But he's in that universe. And this is why I'm really adamant about the model here. We have a model of the world, a functioning model that the people who are on the world stage do not. They are believers and they're subjective. They're subject to whatever they're told to believe. But when you look at the world stage separate, as a separate frame of reference, as a worldview, when you see it as such, you have to have this overview effect. But then you can see how the playing field operates, and from their perspectives, how they wouldn't have any information to tell them otherwise. Like they don't deal with contradiction well. They don't deal with cognitive dissonance. The reason why blue pillars turn away at your red pill, they can't handle the cognitive dissonance of recognizing that there's more than one world, that there's an overlapping simulation that's been superimposed. I mean, I'm comfortable living in these two worlds. I understand. Your world is fake. Mine is real. We have a shared physical reality, but our mental spaces have some places where they don't overlap. But when you've stepped off the world stage, your view encompasses all of their views. It's all inclusive. That's why I've said before that the only true overview effect is the off-world stage perspective. And every one of you has that. You've had that glimpse. Or you've taken that glimpse, you've taken that insight, and now that's how you see things. You've removed the lens. You've cleared the lens of perception. What do they call it? The doors of perception. Joined by HLG, GLH. Says hello, penguiners. Penguiners. Spelled WINNERS. Yeah, and we are winners in this, because once you get on the world stage, it's a rigged game, it's a rigged reality, and everybody loses, except for the house. The house always wins. The Matrix always wins. The capstoners always win. In the movie War Games, the catchphrase is, "Strange game. The only winning move is not to play." And I would say that describes us. When you step off the world stage to that extent to where you're not participating in the mind war, you're not losing. Okay, this has been a great catch-up. Again, this is the IPS Morning Deprogram. Lots to talk about. We'll be taking phone calls tonight. Happy birthday again to one of our Penguinati in the chat. And this is the call 42, JT33. Jennifer Lovecraft Reeves. I'll put a link to this track in the chat.
Every time I'm gonna look at JT33, all I'm gonna be thinking of is that fucking picture with the one eye and the 33.
years on this earth, since my birth, ever since been searching for worth. In the worthless sea of NPCs, preaching a vision with dribble and drool, tossed helpless and naked into the pit of the zoo. 42, 42, like the chaos created and authored for you. Don't panic, it's an appeal to consensus sort of fallacy. You've now entered the auto hoax's guide to the galaxy, so just get up out of my business if you don't wanna be in my shit list. We're speaking loud and carry a big stick. It's like, Jay, you're cutting your wrist to spite your arm. Open your eyes, these humans are being farmed. Media compliant fakery, setting the stage for the doomsday. I pushed away all my fears and now I'm doing things my way. It all started when I started questioning my faith. Like a wraith in the night, the lies pushed me away from the light. Raised Christian, turned atheist to antichrist. I was always fascinated by the darker sides of life, but I'm never the panic type.
This life is a test, sir. You're never given more than you can handle. It's all about how you handle the situation. Always look for the crack of light in the dark. Believe it or not, it's there.
My father named me Damien despite my mother. Yeah, she was a Roman Catholic, him an atheist who didn't believe that Jesus rose from the dead. Instead, he had his own version of events, and hence 'twas a recipe